I almost never ask a poet, what did you mean by this? What was really going on? What are you trying to say? I never do that. I never ask that. I think whatever the poet wanted to express is right there on the page. I translate the words to the best that I can. And I make them sound as if I'm not simply translating the words, that it's not a mechanical exercise. I want to get in touch with some sort of meaning and sensation and feeling and all of that. When it comes to what do I ask? It really it depends. With Sichuan, I don't usually ask him any questions. I just send him my drafts. His English is very good. He went to an English language school as a kid. He was an English major at Beijing University in the 80s. He's completely fluent in English. He can read my translations and he can tell me if I've made mistakes, or he can sometimes say, oh, you can say that? I didn't know. That's great. In terms of that, he and I work well together. If I'm translating someone like my friend Chris Song Zijiang, a Hong Kong poet, his English is great too. So I do the same thing with him. He translates some of his own poems into English, and there are some where he's asked me to translate. And so I will translate those, ask him to check my translations of his poems too. When I've translated someone like Duoduo speaks English, but not super fluently. So it's much more laborious for him to go through English translations. And his attitude is, you do what you want. You've put this book together and it's yours as much as it's mine. I was happy to say this is what we've done, but he wasn't really interested in checking my work. A couple of questions here or there. Part of that has to do with just how close. It's a lot easier for me to email someone in English. I can write a quick email in English. But if I'm writing an email in Chinese to somebody who lives far away, then it takes a lot more work. And that's a disincentive for me to be asking these kinds of questions. Or in the case of Mangke doesn't speak any English at all. So I asked him some questions and he said, oh, don't worry about it. In those days, we were just playing around. I met him at a studio outside of Beijing, and he's like, oh, 我们那会儿就是写着玩儿的，不要太认真了. So, we were just playing around and don't take it too seriously. And I thought, all right, that tells me a lot already. Sometimes I translate poems of classical Chinese poets who have been dead 1,000 years, and they don't respond to my emails anyway. It's just a completely different issue. But all the time, I will ask different kinds of readers to read my translations. I will ask poetry readers who don't know Chinese to read my translation and ask me and tell me what they think. And I will ask poetry readers who do read Chinese, sometimes native speakers, sometimes non-native speakers. And I'll ask them all to look at my work and say, what do you think? Have I made mistakes? What have I done? So it's never for me simply about only serving the interests of the poet, although that's obviously one important thing. I try to make the translation as good as it can be according to as many standards as I can match, as many different standards as I can come up with.